A president boards his jet for a routine flight. But high above the clouds, a silent betrayal is already in motion. What happens next will decide whether Ibrahim Traoré lives to see the ground again, and who will pay the price for trying to kill him. Before we dive in, what time are you listening, and where are you from? Drop a comment below and tell me. Please like and subscribe to join the Ibrahim Traoré family. The presidential jet sits on the tarmac in Ouagadougou. Ibrahim Traoré walks toward it, his boots hitting the concrete with steady rhythm. The Burkina Faso flag waves behind the terminal building where officials stand watching. He climbs the stairs without hesitation, without ceremony. This is just another flight. Inside the cabin, the crew moves through their checks. Everything appears normal. The pilot runs through the instrument panel, his hands moving across switches and dials. A male flight attendant secures the galley, his eyes scanning the interior. The engines hum to life, and the jet begins to roll toward the runway. But something feels wrong. The flight attendant pauses near the cockpit door. He notices the pilot's hand linger too long on a panel that should not need attention. A small adjustment. A switch moved when no switch should be touched. The attendant says nothing, but his mind begins to race. The flight was scheduled 3 days ago. A routine trip to inspect military installations in the northern regions. The pilot was assigned last minute, replacing the regular captain who called in sick that morning. The attendant remembers thinking it was odd. The regular pilot never missed flights. Never. The jet lifts off. Ouagadougou shrinks below them as they climb into open sky. Ibrahim sits in the main cabin, reviewing documents spread across the table before him. Reports from regional commanders. Budget allocations for equipment. Supply chain records that do not add up. He has been studying these files for weeks. The flight attendant brings water, his face calm, but his heartbeat is not. He saw something. He is sure of it now. The way the pilot's shoulders tensed when Ibrahim boarded. The way his eyes followed the president through the cabin before takeoff. Small things. But in this work, small things matter. 20 minutes into the flight, the attendant checks the cockpit again. Through the small window in the door, he sees the pilot reach beneath his seat. The movement is quick, almost invisible, but the attendant catches it. A wire, thin and black, running from beneath the pilot's seat toward the rear of the cockpit. His blood turns cold. He steps back into the cabin, his mind working fast. If he confronts the pilot now, the man might panic. If he waits too long, whatever his plan will happen. Ibrahim looks up from his papers, sensing the tension. The attendant forces a smile and moves toward the rear of the aircraft. In the small service area, he kneels and opens a maintenance panel. His hands shake as he traces the electrical lines running through the fuselage. Then he sees it. A device, no larger than a phone, attached to the hydraulic control system. Wires lead from it to a timer. The numbers on the screen are counting down. 45 minutes remaining. The attendant's training comes back to him in fragments. He served in the military before joining the presidential crew. He has seen explosive devices before, but never like this. Never at 38,000 feet with nowhere to run. He takes a photo with his phone, then closes the panel carefully. He walks back through the cabin, his steps measured and calm. Ibrahim watches him pass, but says nothing. The president has learned to read faces. He sees the fear the attendant is trying to hide. He marks it, but does not react. Not yet. The attendant reaches the cockpit door and knocks twice. The pilot's voice crackles through the intercom, telling him to wait. That hesitation tells the attendant everything. A normal pilot would simply unlock the door. This one is stalling, buying time to hide something. He opens the door anyway. The pilot turns sharply, his face tight with anger. The attendant apologizes, says he needs to check a circuit breaker behind the pilot's seat. The pilot refuses, says everything is fine, says the attendant should return to the cabin. But his eyes betray him. The attendant sees the small control device in the pilot's lap, partially covered by a flight manual. A remote trigger. The pilot's thumb hovers near a red button on its surface. For a moment, neither man moves. The jet hums around them, steady and unaware. Then the attendant acts. He lunges forward, grabbing for the device. The pilot shouts and tries to push him back, but the small cockpit leaves no room to fight. They struggle, hands grasping, elbows striking metal panels. The control device falls to the floor and slides beneath the co-pilot's seat. Ibrahim hears the commotion and rises from his seat. He moves toward the cockpit just as the attendant stumbles backward through the door, blood running from his nose. The pilot stands behind him, breathing hard, his hand reaching for something at his waist. A pistol, small and black, pulled from beneath his uniform jacket. The gun rises. Ibrahim does not freeze. He steps forward and drives his shoulder into the attendant, pushing him aside as the pistol fires. The bullet punches through the cabin wall, depressurizing the space with a violent hiss. Oxygen masks drop from the ceiling, swinging wildly. Ibrahim grabs the pilot's wrist and slams it against the cockpit doorframe. Once, twice, the gun falls. The pilot throws a wild punch that catches Ibrahim across the jaw, but the president does not let go. He twists the pilot's arm behind his back and forces him to the floor. The attendant scrambles for the fallen device beneath the seat. His fingers close around it, and he sees the timer. 22 minutes remaining. He looks at Ibrahim, who is holding the pilot down with one knee pressed into the man's spine. The attendant shows him the device. Ibrahim's face hardens. He tells the attendant to find the bomb. Now, the attendant runs to the rear of the aircraft and tears open the maintenance panel again. The device is still there, wires still connected, timer still counting down. He has no training for this. No tools. Just his hands and 21 minutes. He pulls at the wires, trying to trace which one leads to the detonator. The pilot, pinned in the cockpit, begins to laugh. A cold, bitter sound. He shouts that it does not matter. That even if they disconnect the timer, the backup trigger will activate when they descend below 5,000 feet. There is no escape. Ibrahim drags the pilot to his feet and forces him into one of the passenger seats. He binds the man's wrists with a seatbelt, pulling it tight enough to cut circulation. Then he returns to the attendant, who is staring at the device with sweat running down his face. Ibrahim kneels beside him. Together, they examine the wiring. Two paths. One leads to the timer, the other to a pressure sensor, just as the pilot said. If they cut the wrong wire, the bomb detonates immediately. If they cut nothing, they have 19 minutes before it explodes anyway. If they descend, the pressure trigger will finish what the timer started. Ibrahim looks at the altimeter display on the cabin wall. They are cruising at 38,000 feet. He tells the attendant to keep the jet at this altitude. Do not descend. Do not let the pressure change. Then he turns back to the bomb. The pilot laughs again from his seat. He tells Ibrahim that the fuel will run out in less than 3 hours, that they cannot stay up here forever, that he has already won. Ibrahim ignores him and studies the device more closely. The wires are color-coded, but the codes mean nothing to him. The attendant returns from the cockpit, his face pale. He says the autopilot is engaged, but someone needs to monitor the controls. They cannot leave the cockpit unattended. Ibrahim tells him to go. He will handle the bomb. The attendant hesitates, then nods and returns to the pilot's seat. Alone with the device, Ibrahim takes a slow breath. He has faced armed rebels, coup attempts, assassins in the night. But this is different. This is silent and patient and absolute. One wrong move, and everyone on this jet dies. He reaches for the first wire. His hand stops. Something the pilot said about the backup trigger activating below 5,000 feet. But the device in front of him only has two visible components: the timer and the explosive. Where's the pressure sensor? He looks closer, running his fingers along the edges of the device. There, a third wire, hidden behind the main housing. It runs not to the bomb, but to a separate unit mounted inside the panel wall. The pressure trigger is independent. Cutting the timer will do nothing if the altitude trigger remains active. He needs to disable both. But there is only one problem. The pressure trigger is armed. A small LED glows red on its surface, indicating active status. If he removes it from the wall, it might interpret the disconnection as a pressure change and detonate anyway. He is trapped in a logic puzzle designed to kill him. The attendant's voice crackles over the intercom. Fuel at 60%. They have just over 2 hours of flight time remaining. If they do not land soon, they will fall from the sky anyway. Ibrahim closes his eyes and thinks. There has to be a way. He stands and walks back to the pilot. Sits across from him. Asks him directly who built this device. The pilot stays silent. Ibrahim leans forward. Tells him that if this plane crashes, the pilot dies too. The man's eyes flicker. Just for a moment. Fear breaks through. The pilot speaks. Says a technician in the Capitol built it. Someone with access to military equipment. Someone who knows explosives. But he will not give a name. Will not identify who paid for it. Ibrahim presses harder. Asks how much the pilot was offered. The man's jaw tightens. 50 million francs. Enough to disappear. Enough to start over in another country. The pilot thought it would be simple. A mechanical failure at altitude. No survivors. No witnesses. No one would ever know it was murder. But now everything has gone wrong. Ibrahim asks who gave the order. The pilot shakes his head. Says he never met them directly. All contact was through encrypted messages. Dead drops in Ouagadougou. Cash payments left in agreed locations. He only knows it came from inside the government. Someone with power. Someone with everything to lose. Then it comes to him. The pressure sensor measures altitude by reading air pressure. But the cabin is pressurized artificially. If he can convince the sensor that the aircraft is still at high altitude, even as they descend, it will not trigger. He needs to isolate the sensor from the cabin pressure. He calls the attendant back. Tells him to bring the emergency oxygen tank from the rear storage. The attendant does not understand, but he obeys. Together, they remove the pressure sensor from the wall, moving with surgical slowness. The red LED stays lit. So far, it has not detonated. Ibrahim places the sensor inside a small metal case from the galley. Then he opens the oxygen tank and begins flooding the case with pure oxygen, increasing the pressure inside. The sensor's reading stabilizes. It believes it is still at high altitude. He seals the case and wraps it in insulation. Now the timer. 14 minutes remaining. He returns to the main device and examines the two remaining wires. Red and black. Classic, but also meaningless. Bomb makers do not follow conventions. He looks at the pilot, who is watching him with quiet satisfaction. Ibrahim asks which wire to cut. The pilot smiles. Says nothing. Ibrahim asks again. Still nothing. Then Ibrahim stands, walks to the cockpit, and returns with the pistol that fell during their fight. He places the barrel against the pilot's knee and asks one more time. The pilot's smile fades. He tells Ibrahim that it does not matter which wire he cuts, that both are decoys, that the real trigger is inside the explosive itself, on a separate circuit that activates if anyone tampers with the external wiring, that the moment Ibrahim cuts either wire, the bomb will know it has been touched, and it will explode. Ibrahim stares at him. 11 minutes remaining. If the pilot is telling the truth, they are already dead. If he is lying, then cutting the right wire will save them. But there is no way to know. No time to verify. No room for mistakes. The attendant speaks from the doorway. He says they are running out of options, that they should depressurize the cabin, put on oxygen masks, and bail out. But Ibrahim shakes his head. They are over open terrain. The fall would kill them. And even if they survive, the jet would crash into a village below. He looks at the timer again. 9 minutes. Then he makes a decision. He tells the attendant to return to the cockpit and prepare for an emergency descent. They are going to land at the nearest airstrip, pressure trigger or no pressure trigger. It is their only chance. The attendant's eyes widen. He reminds Ibrahim about the altitude trigger. Ibrahim nods. He knows. But if the sealed case holds, if the sensor still believes it is at high altitude, they might survive. Might. The attendant does not argue. He runs to the cockpit. The jet begins to descend. The altimeter needle drops. 30,000 feet. 25,000. 20,000. The pressure inside the cabin shifts slightly as they fall. Ibrahim watches the sealed case, waiting for the explosion. But it does not come. The oxygen pressure inside the case is holding. 15,000 feet. The timer shows 6 minutes. They are in a race now. Altitude versus time. If they land before the timer reaches 0, they live. If the pressure sensor triggers first, they die. If the timer runs out, they die. There is no margin for error. Ibrahim returns to the bomb one more time. He cannot cut the wires, cannot remove the explosive. But maybe he does not have to. Maybe there is another way. He looks at the device's housing. It is secured with 4 small screws. Military grade. Tamper-resistant. He finds a maintenance toolkit in a storage compartment. Inside is a set of precision screwdrivers. He selects one and begins working on the first screw. His hands are steady despite the clock ticking down. 5 minutes remaining. The screw turns slowly, thread by thread. 10,000 feet. For minutes on the timer. The attendant's voice comes over the intercom. He has visual on a military airstrip near Bobo del Lasso. He is requesting emergency clearance. The tower responds immediately, clearing all traffic. The runway is theirs. The first screw comes free. Ibrahim moves to the second. His hands are cramping now from the tension. 3 minutes remaining. The second screw resists. It has been over-tightened. He applies more pressure. The screwdriver slips. He repositions and tries again. 5,000 feet. The pressure triggers threshold. Ibrahim holds his breath. The red LED inside the sealed case flickers, then steadies. The oxygen pressure is still holding it stable. They pass through 5,000 feet without incident. The attendant lets out a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. 2 minutes 30 seconds. The second screw comes loose. Ibrahim moves to the third. His shirt is soaked through with sweat. The cabin temperature feels like it has risen 10 degrees. The third screw turns more easily. 1 minute 45 seconds. 3,000 feet. The runway appears in the distance. A thin line of gray against red earth. The jet's landing gear deploys with a heavy thunk. 1 minute 15 seconds. The fourth screw is stuck. Ibrahim tries to force it. The screwdriver slips again. He is running out of time. He abandons the screws. Grabs the bomb casing with both hands. Twists it. The housing is metal but thin. He twists harder. Something inside cracks. He twists again. The casing begins to separate. 45 seconds remaining. The jet's wheels touch down. The aircraft bounces once, then settles onto the runway. The attendant throws the engines into reverse. 30 seconds. Ibrahim tears the casing apart with his bare hands. The internal circuit board is exposed. 20 seconds. He sees it now. The real trigger. A small mercury switch mounted on the board's edge. Any tilt or rotation activates it. That is why the external wires were decoys. The bomb was designed to kill anyone who tried to disarm it. 15 seconds. Ibrahim does not hesitate. He rips the mercury switch from the board. Wires tear free. The timer stops. The LED goes dark. The bomb is dead. 10 seconds that will never count down. 9 seconds frozen in time. 8 seconds that mean nothing now. The jet slows. The end of the runway approaches. The attendant pulls the emergency brake. The tires scream against concrete. They are still moving. Still too fast. But the bomb will not explode. Ibrahim stands and walks to the emergency exit. The jet finally stops, 20 meters from the end of the runway. Ibrahim throws open the door. Fresh air rushes in. He looks back at the disarmed bomb sitting in the maintenance panel. The timer reads 7 seconds. 7 seconds away from death. 7 seconds that he stole back. Military vehicles surround the jet within minutes. Soldiers pour out, weapons raised. Ibrahim appears in the doorway, the bomb circuit board in his hands. He descends the stairs and hands it to a bomb disposal expert. The man examines it, and his face goes pale. He understands how close it was. Ibrahim climbs back into the jet. The pilot is still seated, still bound. The man's confidence has evaporated. He knows what comes next. Ibrahim sits across from him again. Asks who gave the order. The pilot's resistance is gone now. He begins to talk. A minister. A man named Ouedraogo. Minister of Infrastructure and Transport. The pilot spells out everything. The encrypted messages. The cash drops. The promise of safe passage out of the country. But there is more. Ouedraogo was not working alone. The bomb was ordered because Ibrahim was getting too close. Too close to what? The pilot explains. A network. Officials throughout the government funneling money from construction contracts. Roads that were never built. Bridges that existed only on paper. Equipment purchased but never delivered. Hundreds of millions of francs stolen over years. Ibrahim was scheduled to visit a new military base in the north. A base whose construction costs tripled during development. Ouedraogo authorized those increases. Signed the contracts. Approved the budgets. If Ibrahim inspected the base, he would see that half the facilities do not exist. The fraud would be exposed. So Ouedraogo decided to eliminate the problem. A plane crash would halt all investigations. Would create chaos. Would give the network time to cover their tracks. And if done correctly, no one would ever know it was murder. Just a tragic accident. A mechanical failure. These things happen, but they did not happen. And now Ouedraogo's entire network is exposed. The pilot gives names, dates, account numbers, everything he knows. He talks for 20 minutes without stopping. By the time he finishes, Ibrahim has a map of corruption that reaches into 8 government ministries. Soldiers take the pilot away. Ibrahim remains in the jet with the flight attendant. The man is sitting now, his body finally giving in to exhaustion. Ibrahim sits beside him, thanks him, tells him that his actions saved not just their lives, but potentially the future of the country. The attendant shakes his head, says he was just paying attention, says anyone would have done the same. Ibrahim disagrees, says most people do not pay attention, do not trust their instincts, do not act when action means risking everything. The attendant's hands are still shaking. Ibrahim gives him space to process it all. An hour later, soldiers arrive at Minister Ouedraogo's residence in Ouagadougou. The Burkina Faso flag hangs outside the ministry building nearby. They find him in his study, surrounded by burning documents. The fireplace is full of ash. His laptop has been wiped, but they are too late to destroy everything. In a safe hidden behind a painting, they find ledgers, physical records kept as insurance. Ouedraogo was smart enough to know that digital evidence could disappear, but he was not smart enough to destroy his insurance policy in time. The ledgers detail every transaction, every payment, every participant. By evening, 12 officials are in custody. By morning, that number grows to 23. Bank accounts are frozen. Assets are seized. The investigation expands into construction companies, foreign contractors, and international banks. The web is vast, but it is no longer hidden. Ibrahim returns to Ouagadougou that night on a different aircraft. As he flies over the capital, he thinks about the base he was supposed to inspect, the facilities that do not exist, the money that vanished while soldiers went without proper equipment, the corruption that grew bold enough to try to murder a president. He lands and goes directly to his office. The Burkina Faso flag hangs on the wall behind his desk. He spends the next 6 hours reviewing the documents seized from Ouedraogo's home. The scale of the theft is staggering, but the pattern is clear. Every project that went over budget, every delayed construction timeline, every cost overrun, it all traces back to the same network. At dawn, he holds an emergency meeting with his security council, presents the evidence, lays out the connections, shows them how deep the corruption runs. Some council members are shocked. Others are silent. One admits he suspected but had no proof. Another asks how they move forward. Ibrahim's answer is simple: complete transparency, public trials, full audits of every ministry. No exceptions, no protected positions. If the evidence leads to someone, they answer for it, regardless of rank, regardless of connections. The rule of law applies to everyone, or it applies to no one. Within a week, the audits begin. Teams of investigators descend on every ministry named in the ledgers. They compare budgets to actual deliveries. They visit construction sites. They interview workers. They trace money through banks in 3 countries. The scope of the operation is unprecedented. Ouedraogo's trial begins 2 months later. The courtroom is packed. The Burkina Faso flag stands beside the judge's bench. Evidence is presented day after day. Bank statements, forged documents, testimony from contractors who were forced to inflate invoices, testimony from officials who were pressured to approve fraudulent budgets. The pilot testifies, describes the recruitment process, the payments, the training he received on how to install the bomb. He names the technician who built it. The technician is arrested the same day. He confirms everything, admits he was paid 2 million francs, thought he was building something for a training exercise. Ouedraogo's defense is that he was following orders from higher up, that he was just one part of a system, that others bear more responsibility. But the ledgers tell a different story. They show him initiating deals, negotiating percentages, laundering money through family members. He was not a subordinate. He was an architect. The verdict takes 3 days to reach. Guilty on all counts: embezzlement, conspiracy, attempted murder of a head of state. The sentence is 30 years. No parole. Full asset forfeiture. His family's wealth is stripped. His properties are seized. His accounts are emptied. Everything he stole is returned to the state. But Ouedraogo is not the end. The investigation continues. 2 more ministers are charged. A deputy director in the finance ministry. 3 generals who approved equipment purchases that never materialized. A dozen contractors who participated in the fraud. The trials stretch over a year. Some convictions stick. Others are overturned on technical grounds. But the message is clear. The old system is dead. The days of stealing without consequence are over. Every official now knows they are being watched. Every contract is scrutinized. Every budget is audited. Ibrahim visits the military base in the north eventually, the one he was supposed to inspect the day someone tried to kill him. He sees the half-built barracks, the roads that end abruptly, the equipment storage buildings with no equipment inside. He sees where the money was supposed to go and where it went instead. He orders the base completed properly, assigns new contractors, installs oversight teams to monitor every step. The work takes 8 months. But when it finishes, the base is exactly what was promised in the original plans. Functional, complete, worth what was paid for it. On the day the base opens, Ibrahim speaks to the soldiers stationed there, tells them about the corruption that nearly left them without a facility, about the minister who tried to murder him to hide his crimes, about the flight attendant who saved them all by paying attention to details. The soldiers listen in silence. He tells them that this base exists because one man saw something wrong and refused to ignore it, that it exists because corruption failed, that it stands as proof that the system can be beaten, that integrity can win, but only if people are willing to fight for it. Later that evening, Ibrahim sits in a small restaurant in the village of Kumbia near the base. The place is simple: concrete floors, plastic chairs, food served on metal plates. He eats with soldiers from the new base, listens to their stories, their concerns, their hopes. One soldier asks him if he was scared on the plane. Ibrahim considers lying, then decides against it. Says yes, he was terrified. But fear is not the enemy. Fear is information. It tells you when something matters, when the stakes are real. The question is whether you let it paralyze you or drive you forward. Another soldier asks if he trusts anyone now. After what happened, Ibrahim thinks about the flight attendant, about the soldiers who arrested Ouedraogo, about the investigators who spent months tracing stolen funds, about the judges who refused to be influenced. Trust is not blind, he says. Trust is earned, and there are still people worth trusting. The conversation shifts to other things: training schedules, equipment quality, family news from home. Ibrahim listens more than he speaks. This is why he fights, not for abstract principles, but for these soldiers, for their families, for the people in villages like Kumbia who deserve leaders who actually serve them. He returns to Ouagadougou late that night. The city is quiet. Streetlights cast long shadows across empty roads. He thinks about the bomb, about 7 seconds, about how close the country came to losing everything because one man decided his wealth was worth more than other people's lives. In his office, the Burkina Faso flag still hangs on the wall behind his desk. He sits and opens a file. A new investigation. Reports of inflated pharmaceutical purchases at public hospitals. Medicine that was ordered but never arrived. Sick people who went untreated while someone somewhere grew richer. It never ends. But neither does the fight. The pilot failed. Ouedraogo failed. The network failed. They failed because one man paid attention. Because Ibrahim refused to die quietly. Because the system pushed back. And it will keep pushing back. Every single time. The flight attendant received a medal 3 months after the incident. A ceremony at the presidential palace. The Burkina Faso flag displayed prominently in the hall. Ibrahim pinned the medal to his chest and thanked him publicly. Told the gathered crowd that this man represents the best of their country. Vigilance, courage, integrity. The attendant gave a short speech. Said he did not feel like a hero. Said he just saw something wrong and could not walk away. Said that is what anyone should do. What everyone must do. If corruption survives, it is because good people see it and stay silent. He refused to be silent. Ibrahim thinks about those words often. About how many people see corruption and look away. About how many know something is wrong but convince themselves it is not their problem. About how many choose comfort over confrontation. The system survives on that silence. Dies when people refuse to give it. Months later, the investigation into the pharmaceutical fraud yields results. Another minister arrested. Another network exposed. More trials. More convictions. The pattern repeats. But each time, it becomes harder for corruption to hide. Each time, more people are willing to speak up, to report, to testify. Change is slow, but it is happening. The base in the north is complete. Roads that were promised are being built. Equipment is arriving. Budgets are being spent on what they claim to fund. It is not perfect. There are still problems. Still fraud. Still theft. But less than before. And less every year. Ibrahim sits in his office late one night, reviewing reports. The Burkina Faso flag behind him. The city dark outside his window. He thinks about the jet. About the bomb. About 7 seconds. About a flight attendant who refused to ignore what he saw. That is the lesson. That is what survives. Not the corruption. Not the wealth stolen. Not the power abused. What survives is the choice people make when they see something wrong. Do they look away? Or do they act? Everything else follows from that single decision. The pilot sits in prison. 28 years remaining on his sentence. Ouedraogo sits in another facility. His wealth gone. His power erased. His legacy reduced to a case study in corruption. They made their choice. They acted for themselves. They lost. The flight attendant goes about his life. Still works. Still pays attention. Still refuses to ignore details that do not add up. He made his choice too. He acted for others. And because of that, a president lived. A network fell. A country changed. That is the question every person faces. When you see corruption, when you witness theft, when you know something is wrong, do you convince yourself it is not your problem? Do you stay quiet to protect yourself? Or do you act? Even when action is dangerous. Even when you risk everything. Even when you might fail. Because sometimes 7 seconds is all that separates justice from catastrophe. Sometimes, one person paying attention is the difference between a system that thrives and a system that collapses. Sometimes, the smallest choice is the most important one you will ever make. So if you like this video, please like and subscribe for more videos like this.